Gather around, make yourself comfy. It's time for another Miami Dolphins fans group therapy session here on Locked On Dolphins.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Miami, welcome to another episode of Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day here on the Locked On Network. I'm your host, Kyle Krabs, lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, host of Locked On Dolphins, co-host of Locked On NFL Scouting, author of Touchdown Miami on Substack, NFL staff writer for A to Z Sports. Want to give a special welcome and shout out to our everydayers because it is your team every day. We don't just say it, we live it. Here on the Locked On Network. Today's episode of Locked On Dolphins is brought to you by Mazda. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. Mazda, move and be moved. Well, there were some details that weren't sweat quite enough for the Dolphins in Week 5, who blew a 17-0 lead. Who rushed for the least amount of yards of any game in the Mike McDaniel Dolphins era in their first game without Tyreek Hill, and not for anything that was spectacularly done from a structure standpoint to load the box. In a game in which the Dolphins conceded almost 240 yards on the ground without Chuba Hubbard dressing for the game, I'd be pissed if I was Chuba Hubbard, because you missed the chance to go out and run against this defensive front. Mike McDaniel comes out after the game, says, we got to go back to the drawing board on defense. Yes, sir, you do. Starts with Anthony Weaver, starts with the personnel usage, which some of the personnel utilization out of this game as the dust settles. You watch some of the tape. I'm not all the way done watching the tape yet, but I have enough to do a group therapy session with. Some player utilization, some front structures. I got questions. I got a lot of questions. And I know some of it is probably trying to fit around what you have to work with in the back end. I understand that. And these are complicated jigsaw puzzles that you're trying to put together. But the puzzle you've put together so far, you've jammed several puzzle pieces from the sky and mixed them in with several puzzle pieces from the blacktop and have tried to make a full picture out of it. And these pieces are not fitting together. Offensively, let's start there with the run game, where the Dolphins finished this game with 19 rushing yards for the Dolphins in this game. That's 2 less than the Dolphins ran for in 2019 when the Ravens came to town and beat the absolute brakes off you 59-10. You ran for less yards in a game that you led 17-0 than you ran for in that game. Think about that. You have to go back to 2015 for the last time a Dolphins team has run for less than 19 yards in a game. Some of it, sure. You want to make it personnel-wise? Sure. But also, some of this is the runs that you had and how you tried to go after running the ball and what you did and didn't do. I put together, I found the numbers on this because I was curious, because I'm a sick-minded individual, I suppose. The 1st and 10 running opportunities that the Dolphins had as a team. The yards before contact. They ran the ball 8 times on first down against the Panthers. And in those 8 attempts to run the ball, yards before the first contact of the ball carrier, 0, -2, 2, 0, -3, -3, 0, -4. Think about that. You ran the ball 8 times on first down in a game that you at one point led 17-0. And the first 4 of those runs came when you were winning 3-0 or it was 0-0. and you had one run on first down in which the ball carrier got past the line of scrimmage before they were contacted by a player. I watched them. I pulled it up. I said, I want to know who's at fault here. I went play by play. And you got Nick Westbrook-Akine running right past the defensive end as the player in motion at the snap. You've got Julian Hill having Nick Scorton, who's a second-round draft choice, ducking underneath of him on an outside run and just getting the heels of Devon Achane to trip him up for -2, or at first contact -2. You run one gap scheme off the right-hand side, and you get 3 yards on it with Ollie Gordon running downhill. You pull an offensive guard. That went for 2. So the only run in which you had positive yardage was the one run that didn't fall into your typical zone schemes. You've got guys not taking cutback lanes. Yeah, Derek Brown was a superhuman on 2 of those reps. You had another motion at the snap with Devon Achane, and the Panthers went into a run check, and they blitzed the linebacker through the B gap, and nobody touched him. And Ollie Gordon gets impacted 3 yards behind the line of scrimmage. Nothing he can do. 6 of your 8 runs on first down went to the left-hand side. And you had -10 rushing yards on 8 carries on first down in a game that at one point you led by 3 scores. And I get it. The right side of the offensive line is backups. Third string guard, second string right tackle. You're working around certain limitations. But man, is it a gut punch to have your first game without Tyreek Hill, to kind of have some ball control elements early, get a lead, and then completely be shut down in a way in which you effectively gave up on trying to run the ball at one point. And Carolina's front structure was they had 3 down linemen, heavy-handed guys, A'Shawn Robinson, Derek Brown, Bobby Brown, LeBrian Ray had several splash plays at the line of scrimmage. LeBrian Ray had several splash plays at the line of scrimmage, including one on the actual past the line of scrimmage run before first contact with Ollie Gordon on the counter play out of pistol, in which Larry Borum tries to down block LeBrian Ray and comes a little too flat, and Ray gets back up over top of his face and gets the first contact on Ollie Gordon in the pile. And then they had a defensive end, whether it was Princely Umanmielen or whether it was Nick Scorton as the other guy. Maybe it was Patrick Jones. And then they played big nickel, and they had Trayvon Moore living down in the nickel a whole bunch. It wasn't, hey, let's load the box and force the Dolphins to have to pass us to win. Tua Tagovailoa's explanation after the game was, although they went their quarters looks, they stuffed the middle of the field and played linebackers at depth. It's the same explanation for every time you've had offensive problems passing the ball for 2.5 years. Can we stop acting like cover 2 is some grand puzzle to have to solve? I don't think we were quite diverse enough to try to probe for yards on the ground. And I understand you didn't want to run into the middle. And I understand you had a couple cutback opportunities on outside runs and guys didn't take them. I think Achane had one, and I think Ollie Gordon had one. So it's a little bit of everybody. I think it's a little bit of everybody. And that's really frustrating because this is year 4 of this offensive system. Not everybody's played 4 years in the system. Devon Achane's in year 3. Ollie Gordon's in year 1. Jonah Savaianai is in year 1. Continues to be an abject disaster for you at left guard thus far. No ands, ifs, or buts about it. There's some redeeming point of attack skills. But man, was he bad in pass pro again. Just a chaos merchant, the likes of which properly belong in the conversation of names like Liam Eichenberg at this stage. I'd say if you had any viable options that were healthy to put in instead of him, I think you'd be justified to sit him down for a bit. You'd be justified, but they don't have anybody healthy. Andrew Meyer, nope. IR. Liam Eichenberg, pup, nowhere near healthy. James Daniels, injured reserve. So That's the running game. Woes. I think it's a shame. I'm going to get a little bit into the offensive passing game, talking about targets and Darren Waller and Tua and Jaylen Waddle. We'll talk a little bit about it, but the therapy session I need to have is much more rooted in that and what we're going to get into on the defensive side of the ball, including the last 2 weeks when you've given up almost 450 yards on the ground. Who is not playing? We get to talk about that next. You're on Locked On Dolphins. Make sure you guys stick with us. Today's episode of Locked On Dolphins is brought to you by Square. Your favorite neighborhood spots run on Square. There are certain businesses that make the neighborhood the neighborhood. There are places that become an extension of home, whether it's the sports bar dedicated to your team's franchise, the spot with the best wings in town over game day, or that beloved local chain that's rooted in your community for years. These businesses are what bring people together. When neighborhood businesses thrive, the whole neighborhood thrives. So take this ad as your excuse to go to one of your favorite local spots and have yourself a day in the neighborhood. Square is a proud partner of more than 4 million neighborhood businesses around the world. You can go to square.com/go/LockedOnNFL to learn more. But before you do, go support your favorite neighborhood spot. You'll be happy you did. Square, see you in the neighborhood. This episode of Locked On Dolphins is brought to you by Mazda's moving the game forward. For those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's redefining it. There are moments that do more than put points on the board. They move crowds, move culture, and keep moving the game forward. The moving the game forward moment this week for the Dolphins. I'm going to keep it on the Dolphins side of things. They make it really hard with these custom spots when they don't win games. I'll talk about Jaylen Waddle. And in his first game as the unquestioned primary receiver, whether you want to call it wide receiver A and wide receiver B or wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2, unquestioned wide receiver, Jaylen Waddle targeted 9 times, 6 catches for over 110 yards, including a 46-yard touchdown bomb to give the Dolphins the lead back in the final few minutes of this game that the defense ultimately gave back. But it moves the conversation forward as it pertains to the Dolphins, their wide receiver room, as they must continue without Tyreek Hill. When you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to every Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. I do feel for Tua Tagovailoa a little bit in this game. We talked about the guard play. We talked about the lack of running game. Tua actually does get that potential game-winning drive with that bomb to Jaylen Waddle. And the irony here, of course, is the Dolphins did what we hoped we'd see. Mike McDaniel go back to roots, right? As a run game coordinator. No, they didn't do that. But on that play in question, they went with 13 personnel, went under center, took a 7-step play action drop, and they got the kind of separation down the field that they've been sitting here saying, oh, we can't beat cover 2. They're capping our deep routes downfield. When you show them something different and you provide a personnel threat, lo and behold, you get those kind of access plays. And Tua, I said this after the Patriots game, and I said it again after the Bills game. And this is in a year in which you have a quarterback that's on a second contract and things aren't ideal around them, man, and you're evaluating everything about your football operation. Man, I'd really like as many opportunities as we can get to see what Tua Tagovailoa does late in games with a chance to win the football game. We got another one. We technically got 2 against Carolina, just like we technically got 2 against New England. And for the first time, Tua did deliver a go-ahead score in the final minutes with a big-time throw. Was it a perfect down-the-field throw? No. Did Jaylen Waddle have to slow down? Yes. Does that surprise you? It shouldn't. It's 46 yards with a 7-step drop from under center and a hitch. And he moonballed it. And he got it down there, and you live with it if that's the case. But he did put points on the board. Just to have the defense say, no, thank you. We don't want it. We don't want to win. We'd rather give up another 85-yard touchdown drive in a few minutes and put you back out there with 1 minute and 50 seconds left. Go win the game again. And this time we couldn't. All right, so on my list of pecking order of complaints in this game, Tua is not very high up on the list. Did he miss the second down throw on that second potential game-winning drive to Jaylen Waddle? Yes, he did. But I take much more exception with the offensive line play. The skill players, Julian Hill, who had by far, I complimented him last week on the show, so it's my fault. So I'll take the blame for it. But I just gave him a compliment last week and say, hey, first 4 weeks of the season, Julian Hill's been pretty consistent and good as a blocker. Well, he was bad as a blocker in this game. Nick Westbrook-Ikine, multiple missed opportunities. You got Jaylen Waddle on a crack on an outside run to the left. Lots of outside run to the lefts. Can't seal on Trayvon Moore. He gets upfield. You can't secure Derek Brown. He makes play. Your combination block can't secure Derek Brown. He makes play. Jonas Savaiinaia whiffs on a base block opportunity, a solo block. Guy's uncovered, makes play. It's your usual suspects. I take much more exception with the offensive line play and the skill players playing in the run game. Some of that compounded by motion at the snap than I do what the quarterback did or didn't do in this game. Singular. Because, again, multiple things can be true. And this is a group therapy session, so it's kind of me just dumping all my thoughts out for you guys. But defensively, my goodness, catastrophically bad. And you look at some of the snap counts of this game. And when Cornell Armstrong plays more snaps than Chop Robinson does, I have a problem with it. When Cornell Armstrong plays as many snaps as Jordan Phillips, who's your best defensive tackle as a run defender, I have a problem with it. Jordan Phillips, the last 2 weeks, for all of the talk about the young guys not delivering or playing or not playing or doing this, that, the other thing, Jordan Phillips has played less than 30% of the defensive snaps the last 2 weeks. And in that same 2-week period, you have given up almost 450 yards on the ground. Doesn't add up to me. So when Mike McDaniel says after the game that we need to go back to the drawing board, yes, sir, we do. And I'm looking at Chop Robinson the last 2 weeks playing 32% of the snaps, 21 and 22 snaps out of 63 and 70. Jordan Phillips has played less than that. Meanwhile, Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips, 66 and 68.5% defensive snaps on the edge. I think Jalen's been a more consistent pressure player. Chubb's getting the splash plays. He was unblocked off the edge against the Carolina Panthers, and Bryce Young dropped the ball and gave it to him. But his pressure rate's still under 10% for the season on snaps where he's on the field as a pass rusher. They've both played as many snaps as Chop Robinson and Matthew Judon have combined. Meanwhile, Willie Gay, who's a training camp superstar, and they don't trust him to do anything. Tyrell Dotson goes down with a head injury, and it's KJ Britt that's in the game. And I get it. He's a better run defender. But everything, this is what I'm talking about, jigsaw puzzle and try to put personnel pieces together. The puzzle that you've put together feels like not only not a coherent picture with the jigsaw puzzle, but it feels like you took different pieces from different puzzles and smacked it all together to try to make a picture. It's not a very cohesive unit. And that's where I agree with Mike McDaniel's comment after the game. Schematically and from a technique perspective, we have to get guys playing on the same page. You don't give up that many scrimmage yards unless you're uncoordinated in certain ways. And I need to make sure that guys don't fray and don't handle it themselves. We collectively need to build a wall. If play calls need to change for that to occur, then play calls need to change. It just can't continue to go on like this, and it's already gone on too long. So we'll get back to the drawing board. Yes, you do. Defense, top of the charts for this one. And I like Anthony Weaver. I do. But you can't talk that kind of talk and then give up 450 yards on the ground in 2 weeks. All your good graces go out the window, right? All of the benefit of the doubt, especially when you compound that with some of the questions of your first-round pick last year can barely get on the field as a pass rusher. And I know he got called for roughing the passer, but or for unnecessary roughness, but with all due respect, that's BS. You can't do a hip drop tackle from behind like that. Super soft call. Super soft call on the next to last Panthers touchdown drive. I thought that was BS on Chop. And Chop played well otherwise. getting back to the mesh point, and it's one of those things for me. Like, I wonder what is this front best served to do right now? You're trying to have guys lock, peak, shed, control the point of attack, play a gap and a half, be able to big plays on runs to either side. No, do we just need to say, hey guys, let's be aggressive and create some chaos? Do we need to be a little bit more penetration oriented? I'd rather have guys play aggressive and maybe get into the track of the back and force a reroute or make a play in the backfield because you cut the angle down instead of trying to control patiently along the line. And then you can't get off the block and make the play. And then if you do want to play that brand of football, the only guy who's got consistent tape doing it this year is Jordan Phillips, and he's playing less than 30% of the snaps. That doesn't add up. And I get it, dude. Like, the pass rush profile is not great. The pass rush production is not where it needs to be for you to feel like that's a viable piece of the puzzle right now. I get it. So have him run pick stunts and try to make it work. That's why you got these guys on the edge that are making the money, you're insisting on playing 70% of the time. And I thought it was great to see Jaylen Phillips finally get a sack and have his pressure production rewarded. He's about 16% pressure rate this year. It's a respectable number. But we're playing these even fronts with these big gaps, and you got your edge guys walked outside of tight ends, and nobody's in the C gap. So who's fitting the C? A linebacker from depth who can't get off a block, a safety running from 8 yards downfield who's not going to hit it at the same level because the defensive tackle's getting pushed back. Back to the drawing board is the most appropriate thing, and I think the Dolphins would be justified to make any decisions. I also think at this point, Stephen Ross would be justified to make any decisions on changes that he would choose to make. I thought we kind of felt like we crossed that threshold in week 3 with the loss to the Bills. We're in that territory now, and I know people who are more on the optimistic side of the fence say it's only 5 weeks. They're 1-4. They're potentially game and a half out of a playoff spot. This, that, the other thing. And I get it. And that's why I'm not doing a bunch of draft content right now. And that's why not why I'm doing general manager candidates and not why I'm doing head coach candidates and all that kind of programs, because I don't want to do that kind of programming until those kinds of conversations tangibly need to be had because a change has been made. But as I come out the other side of this, what needs to happen? I'm looking at the calendar, and I'm aware of what's looming in about a month. And I'm ready to acknowledge what this team is. This game told me, well, I don't know what the Carolina Panthers are, but this game told me everything that I need to know about who the Miami Dolphins are this year. And Mike McDaniel said, we're a better team than one that concedes a 17-point lead, to which I would contend, no, you're not, because you did. Especially when Bradley Chubb says after the game that guys got comfortable and took their foot off the gas, when Mike said after the game he didn't feel like that happened. This is the second time in 3 weeks one of your team captains has said something that directly conflicts with what you say at the podium after a game. It was 2 in week 3 against Buffalo for the decision-making process based on the coverage for the interception. And this week it's Bradley Chubb. You can't have that level of disconnect. I'm sorry. You can't. And whether that's, you talking to your captains after the game before press, whether that's you being more honest, whether that's you not coming out right and saying so, whatever. It's a concerning manifestation of what you're worried about, which is the disconnect between the coach and the players amidst the questions that continue to arise about the future of the organization based off the current state of affairs and the current record at 1-4. With some really frustrating fundamental flaws that we didn't necessarily show the kind of problem-solving skills that we need to, both offensively and defensively, to avoid the trap. Right? Because if we run 8 times on first down and 6 of them go to the left and they're all outside zone variations, and the best block run you had on first down was a gap scheme counter with a pulling guard going to the right, I have questions. Why didn't we see that again? Why didn't we see another counter power play. There's a lot of zone on first down. What needs to happen next? We're getting into that next here on Locked On Dolphins. Make sure you guys stick with us. NFL season is here and in full swing. It's about a third of the way over, mercifully. FanDuel has an offer that you don't want to miss right now. New customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. What I love about FanDuel is no matter how you like to play, they have it for you, whether that's spreads, money lines, player props, in-game lines, you name it. It makes watching football even more exciting when you got a little something riding on the action for yourself. Whether you're a casual fan or love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. I don't know that group therapy is making me feel any better, but we're getting it all out there. That's for sure. So here's what I think needs to happen for the Dolphins. This is a team that went into this year, and the two things that we said were paramount in success. You could obviously measure success in wins and losses, but the two things that you were looking to see growth with throughout the course of the season is player development and coaching. Those were the things for me that I was going to look to as the beyond tangible wins and losses. You don't have wins and losses. And I don't know that you have growth and encouragement in the way of coaching, and it's still early. But you're far enough in now where if I was to do a plot of players trending in the right direction, players trending in the wrong direction, and players stuck in neutral, I don't think you have enough players that are moving in the right direction, up and to the right, getting better as time goes on. I don't see enough of it. And then there's some of the non-X's and O's elements of it. All right. The coaching with the consistency of the state of affairs with your team and the demeanor of your team and getting the right players on the field and those players making plays and being able to be fluid and adjust and counter on the fly to help win games. I'd just not been there yet. So you're about a month away from the NFL trade deadline. And whatever that needs to look like, because the big question everybody has is, well, if you fire anybody now, what difference is it really going to make? On the field product, it's not. These decisions are about evaluating other people within the organization, trying to evaluate your players from a different lens. And in particular for this Dolphins team, which I think is going to be in a position to have wholesale football operation changes. And that I have a whole bunch of thoughts on that regard. Not ready to get into them yet, because again, I want to make sure they're fully rounded out. And I also want to make sure that they are, it's timely to have those conversations. But I have a lot of thoughts on what it should look like into the next chapter based uniquely on Miami. You need to make sure you are in a position to sell at the deadline. And then you need to sell at the deadline. And I'm not saying you need to trade every meaningful player with a contract. I'm not saying Jaylen Waddle must go, Patrick Paul must go, Zach Sealer must go, right? I think there's players that you look at and ask who you would like to see be a part of the next nucleus of your roster. And those players, unless you get a Godfather offer that's like the Laramie Tunsil package, where they didn't intend to trade Laramie Tunsil, but the offer was too good to be true, you have to take it, right? And I certainly think that's not, nobody should be considered that untouchable in that regard. And that was case in point with Laramie Tunsil. As a star offensive tackle, but when you get the size of draft picks that you get, you kind of have to say yes to that deal. And I don't think there's anybody on this roster that would facilitate a deal anywhere near that magnitude. I just want to be clear on that. But whatever offloading of salary that you can do, because again, if you offload salary, it creates more cap space this year that you can then carry over into next year. And you can get rid of looming future dollars and commitments in cap and get resources for these players so it doesn't end up with what's going to end up happening with Tyreek Hill, in which you chose last year at the deadline to keep Tyreek Hill, push the envelope, try to make a run. You kind of made a run, but you finish at 8-9 and miss the playoffs. Tyreek's pissed. He says he wants to leave. Everybody buries the hatchet. We say we're going to make it work, even though he's not a part of the offseason program because he's recovering from wrist surgery. And then he comes back and he looks better. And then he has a catastrophic injury after 3 weeks, and you're now on the hook for $28.5 million for 3.5 games to Tyreek Hill. And now you're not going to get anything for him. And I didn't really get into that last week because I want to be respectful to the fact that the player got hurt playing for the Dolphins. You don't ever want to see anybody get hurt. And, it was a serious, ugly injury. It's very unfortunate. But if you look at the business of where the Dolphins were, what they chose to do with the rest of their offseason, and then what they chose to do with Tyreek Hill, Tyreek Hill's too important. But then we get our first game without Tyreek Hill, and let's make sure we throw the ball 40 times and show we have a coherent passing game without Tyreek Hill. While we don't get anything for Tyreek Hill after we wrote Tyreek Hill a $19 million check for an option bonus. And he's got $10 million in guarantees this year for his base salary that we're going to pay him too. And we're not getting anything for Tyreek Hill. While we now have to cut him so that $11 million of his salary next year doesn't guarantee. That's bad football team building business. And I would hate for you to find yourselves looking to go into a new chapter at the beginning of next offseason. I would hate for you to have to find yourselves in the same shoes with a player that you held on to because you were 3-5 and you thought maybe, we're coaching for our jobs. Can't trade this guy, but there's no future here. That's what this has to be about. And if Bradley Chubb, at this stage with the way he's playing and what the salary is and what the contract looks like, he's a great leader. I like Bradley Chubb. But do I see Bradley Chubb here long-term with the contract that he's on? No. So if a team needs some pass rush help and I need to get Chop Robinson on the field for more than 32% of my team's defensive plays, you know what I'm probably doing? If somebody calls, I'm probably taking the deal. But you can't do that if everybody's on the hot seat and trying to save their jobs. So whatever that needs to look like at this point, in my mind, at 1-4, is what needs to happen. And Kyle Krause, I'm out of here. Hope you guys enjoyed Locked On Dolphins for today. I'll talk to you all again soon.